everything we've got on the menu, why did I order a toasted bagel with cream cheese? I think that's the essence of everything. That's the essence of good taste, good flavor, toasted bagel, cream cheese. You can never go wrong with that. Fresh bagels, they're almost an anomaly. We've moved away from the original formulas of bagels. Those bagels would get hard almost instantaneously. I mean, as long as they were hot, they were delicious. But after that, they were still good, but they were very hard, very dense. The young generation of the last 10 or 15 years has changed the bagels into a kind of soft, fluffy roll. It's really more of a roll than a bagel. Right? So the way we make bagels is still in the old way, and they're really great when they're hot, but if they're not, you got to toast them. My philosophy was a bagel was too thick. We cut the bagel into 4 pieces, and we made 2 sandwiches out of it. And I think that's the right proportion of bagel to cream cheese, bagel to smoked salmon, bagel to lox, bagel to anything else. We're talking now about Bialys. I'm glad you brought that up. It's been a very long time since I've had a delicious Bialys. I used to love Bialys. Bialys were like a specialty, but now you go to places like, I mean, those don't, they don't resemble Bialys. I mean, it's a joke. The lights, the old Bialys are the very light sanding of flour, and they were like very light in color. They had that onion in them. I mean, and they had that special flavor. Of all the things I've tried to make, Bialys are not one of them. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Well, Bialys are made in an oven with a very, very low deck. We have bread ovens and bagel ovens are different. You know, bagels you form the bagel, you put it on a board that's covered with damp canvas, and you put it into a special oven, but you have plenty of room to lift it up, and then when it's halfway done, you flip it off the board onto the deck of the oven. Bialys traditionally were made in an oven that had a deck about maybe 6 inches, and they or in the old days maybe a little bit bigger, and they were put in with a peel and taken out by a peel. It's a very different process. I don't even know the ingredients of a true Bialys. I would say I would favor the Mets. I never favored the Yankees. I didn't like the fact that they just spent money to get somewhere. No. But I have 2 sons, and as much as I love them, they've gone over to the dark side, and the dark side being the new bagel. So a month or 2 ago, or 3 or 4 ago, I said to Oliver, "Look, you don't like the way we make them? Fine. I don't have the time to waste it. You make them any way you want to make them. You go, well, so-and-so makes great bagels. I'm going to go find out. I know the guy who, consulted with them." I said, fine, go there, go do it. I don't want any part of it. What bread would work best for sopping up stuff? But you actually asked specifically about eggs, which is interesting. Eggs like in scrambled eggs like in soft-boiled eggs. Those guys, okay. The very best bread for something like that is one that I make. It's called my health bread. We used to call it 7 grain bread. 7 grain. Then people said there aren't 7 grains in the world. Okay, I'll have them bring you some out. This is absolutely, again, toasted. That's great. Dan, could you bring a couple of slices of the health bread? What do we call it? Health bread?
7 grains.
What's this? This is a secret recipe admired by anybody who really loves bread for the purpose of egg sopping up or cream cheese and smoked salmon. It's fantastic. So you'll see it. You'll see it in a few minutes. Okay. So now, but let's not end with sopping up eggs. Let's go to other things. Okay. We have what we call the Jerusalem loaf. Okay. This is a great bread for it's how can I even describe it? Baked in a brick oven. The crumb has big holes in it. Got to smell this. First of all, every bread has to be smelled. There are some things in life that you have to put your nose right into, and bread is without doubt number one. Okay. I mean, you can't. What else except bread? You wouldn't put your nose in a hamburger or I mean, you might put your head over some roast or something like that, and waft the odors into your nose or the smells. But think of something that you would you have to go and put your. And is that satisfying? That is. Take a deep whiff of that. Oh my God! Oh. And toasted. I mean, this bread actually it stays fresh for the rest of your life, and there are no preservatives in it. So okay, so this is we talked about this actually only for eggs. Then we got on to my Jerusalem loaf, which is very crusty, hearth baked, very open textured. Like when you cut it, it's like little holes of different sizes, and it's kind of mushy. And that would be that mushy. That would allow you to. It's like a sponge. That would allow you to kind of run it through all sorts of sauces or butter. Almost all the butter in this country sucks, and there are some artisanal butters being made that are delicious, and butter like. The European butter, especially French butter, they have a culture. It's like it's an enzyme. It comes out of the cow's stomach, and it gives it brings lots of flavor. It's interesting. I mean, 80, 70, 80, 100 years ago, I bet our butter in this country was probably delicious, and that's when my mother used to only have sweet butter. But sweet butter was delicious in those days. But things have changed. I don't know. They don't let the cows, but the milk is different. Jeff, this butter is like a rock. Did you run out of butter? No. Why am I being served butter that's like a rock? Yeah. In order to get any real flavor out of butter today, you need to only eat salted butter. Because in my bakeries, if you keep kneading the butter, you'll end up with a bucket of water underneath. I mean, the water drips out of it. When you go and have butters from Europe and you knead them, there's no water, no liquid, and that's why European butters are much better for baking. I think when I started in my own business, I lived it like every moment of the day and night. I couldn't wait to get up in the morning, and I did everything myself. So there was enormous satisfaction, enormous disappointments when things didn't work out. I mean, I was teaching myself to cook, to bake. So there are a lot of failures. I mean, depressing failures, and on a day that something worked out, I'd almost be high. And days that we're making croissants and they didn't come out right, and we're making this or that, and you felt like killing yourself. But so how did things change? I think as the business got bigger, you get much more concerned about business things, and about all the issues of things breaking down, and you get totally caught up in a web of of not interesting things that need to get done. And but the ambition.
Hey. I couldn't tell if he was joking for me to pop up. Am I interrupting?
No,
This is the great cameo.
How's it going?
How you doing?
See you, Eli.
Yeah.
You're holding court in your usual
I'm
spot?
not, but usual spot. I never did this before in my life.
Well, I'm sure you're a natural. Where are the cherry red glasses? Do you have them
I
today?
don't. Yeah, these are the ones.
Okay,
I wear.
very good. But
You want a cup of coffee?
Yeah,
I
we
always-
can-
sit
yeah.
down. He can join us,
Of
right?
course.
Yeah, this guy's a celebrity.
well, I mean, you know.
Yeah, grab a chair. He was interviewing. I mean, he worked every single minute. He didn't eat the food. He didn't have the drinks. He worked. He tried to seek out people that looked interesting or might be interesting. He plied them with questions. I mean, he worked, and we appreciated that.
You got to get it right, you know? Only the best for Eli Zabar. You know, like, you got to report till you drop if you're writing about this guy. Remember the conversation about, so Eli was subjected to New York Times fact-checking, of course, on deadline. Remember the conversation about the tile?
Oh yeah, right. That was was it black or white? No, it's green or white. Is it green? You originally pegged it as black and white. Do you remember that?
I remember it was a very Kafkaesque
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
I agreed. Whatever I have, we agreed
And
it
I
was
kind
okay
of,
to
I
publish.
kind of said, whatever you do, it's fine. No, but you didn't accept that. There were about 8 or 9 other phone calls between us as deadline was clicking in the background. No, we got to do better than anything I want is okay. So
Yeah,
that was
and my editor was like, "What's the holdup?" You know, and I couldn't tell him with a straight face what the holdup was. Like, to tell him that this is the detail that was holding us up. But you know, you do have to get it right.
It sounds like a bad word, ambition, but it's not. I mean, just like, you're following your passion and still getting up every morning and wading through the nonsense to get to the sense is the struggle. Okay, how does ambition change? What's the difference? Or in fact, it's very specifically a piece, a write-up in the Times today, as opposed to when we first began in business. When we first began in business, nobody knew I was here. I depended upon somebody discovering me, and in fact I was very lucky because there was a very sweet girl who was there, I don't remember, who walked her dog past the store every day and would come in and maybe buy a bagel or a roll, but she worked for Vogue. And and like very soon after I opened, they took my picture, and there was something in Vogue, and then somebody in Town and Country saw it, and so we had a spurt of publicity. But look, it's nice to be mentioned. And so I'd say the big difference now. Okay, the really big difference now is that I wanted people to know I existed. Now I want them to know I don't want to be forgotten. That I would say is the major difference. I mean, I was desperate to be known, and now I'm desperate to be remembered. So
I do feel, just to throw something in there, that the Eli Zabar brand and all of your businesses on the Upper East Side, it does feel that there's been I don't know, in the past year or two, I do feel there's a kind of, I don't know, the brand has reached a new, younger audience, and they have a deep interest in you, not just as a restaurateur, but just the kind of the brand that comes with it,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a very recent development. I think that goes along with everything having to do, everything having to do with social media and the world that this is a new world, and now I'm being accepted as a kind of a part of it or something. I don't know. I don't know quite how to say that. Still, I'm trying to make things that are delicious and interesting, and I work on things, and I come up with thoughts and ideas and from things I've seen or mistakes I've made that I want to go back to and work on them. Problem is, then I had all day and all night to work on things. The daily schedule, I have a trainer with a buddy of mine that we've been doing this for 25 or 30 years. Every morning at 6:30, we stretch. We basically just stretch. We used to run around the park for a half hour and then stretch. Now, I don't run anymore. He moved out to Southampton or something. So we do it by Zoom, except he comes in the city and we do it in person. So we do that's 6:30 to 7:30 every morning.
This in every morning.
Every morning. And I try
Donahue has no excuse to not work out.
So but it's more stretching. It's more yoga and a little this and a little of that. And one of the things I've kind of got myself into a bit of trouble about is that why did I want to open on the east side? I just came from the west side. I just came from the west side an hour or two ago. And you know what? Like there's no nice smell on the west side. I mean, the women on the east side, like here, they smell great. I mean, their perfume is great. Their everything, and it's a delight. I very rarely go to the west side except to see my family. And in fact, it was my sister-in-law's 92nd birthday party 2 days ago, and of course I would go to that. And one of my kids said, after I dropped Devin off, let's take a look at this bakery on 86th Street. And I'll tell you, like 86th and Broadway, like it's a disaster. It's like it didn't smell. There were no smells. Of course, there was hardly any food. I couldn't believe these people were waiting online. What are they waiting online for? I wouldn't encourage you to take a look, but if for any. There's no reason for you to ever be on 86th and Broadway. If you are, but you live where do you live? Yeah.
I'm a east to midtowner.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm tracking a lot of what you're saying about the Upper West versus East. They're two completely different provinces.
Broadway, if you look at the stores on Broadway, I'm talking about Broadway, above, I don't know, 75th, 6th Street. I mean, I'm not all that familiar with, but it's, there's nothing nice. There's no design. And if there is a design, it's not carried forth. Anyway, so that was. I don't know how we got down that road. It's absolutely untrue. I think it stems from the fact that this is my 50th year in business, and somewhere around 52 or 3 years ago, and I went to Columbia, and I went to the graduate school in Columbia also, and I used to work at Zabar's. I was the night manager on Friday and Saturday night because they would be open till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and who else could they get to work that and so I was called the night manager. So I was there 3 days a week while I was going to school, and but I realized it was a small business, and my brothers are 15 years older than I am, and it was like being there would never be any room for me, either physically or emotionally, economically, the way the business was structured then. And so I realized I wanted to work for myself. I don't want to work for anybody. Like, you work for yourself. I mean, you depend upon a system to make a living, but you're self-employed.
But you can clarify that there's no rift.
No, absolutely not. There's a complete love and affection, and I think that in fact, when I first opened the business, I didn't have any money, and I borrowed $10,000 from the bank, and I think that my brothers secretly made sure that the banker lent it to me, and I think that they kind of made sure that they've always made sure that everything was okay. And the whole family is very close. My whole family, by the way, lives between 80th Street and West End.
Wow.
and 90th Street and West End. Okay. I mean, between those 10 blocks. Okay. So it's like a real shuttle.
Yeah.
And then I live on the east side. My two sons, we live between 80th and 92nd Street. Plus, I have a nephew that lives on 96th Street on the east side. So I mean, the whole family, cousin, everybody is within 10 blocks.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you threw Eli that question, and you really got the definitive answer from him. But I think it's interesting, Eli, because like in business and so on, people like a story, you know. So whether true or not, it's probably like just added to the mystique and lore for people who are enthused by the Zabar's brand. So I would, people like a story.
It makes a great story. And in fact, it would make even a bigger story if I agreed and I said, listen, no, those guys, blah, blah, blah.
You could carry it on as a beef, that's like Barnum and Bailey stuff.
That would be, the two brothers, the family, the schism in the church, when there were two popes. It would be that would make a real story.
Yeah.
Nope, I'm sorry, I can't give it to you that way.
Can you give us a sense of how you actually check in on your Upper East Side empire? Like, do you visit every spot with regularity? Like, how do you make the rounds?
Well, I have what I call my office, which is my van. As it says Eli's bread on the outside of it, and I go to all the stores, all the places, meet with everybody multiple times a day.
That's amazing. So when you see that van going around, I always thought
my little van.
I always thought it just carried like bread and stuff, but you're in there. He's driving that.
And like I have this restaurant called Eli's Table over, and we have linen napkins. So you can't get the laundry company, the commercial laundry company won't launder linen. So every night they send the next morning they send all the napkins home, and my housekeeper. And that means occasionally me does the napkins. Now these have a little bit of poly in them. They're 90 or 80%. These are cotton. So, but for years I actually built a laundry over my facility. I have a big commissary over on 91st Street between I actually built a laundry so we could launder everything that we had.
Wow. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because we couldn't get it. But we got the linen company to do those, but they won't do the prete napkins, and so we do them at home. But
Eli, we're at Eat, which is your, this was your maiden voyage some 50 years ago. This was your first spot. I loved how you were telling me the scrappy origins of it, like how this area was essentially still kind of a bit of a wasteland. I mean, there wasn't a heck going on. Can you tell us about that kind of humble founding of this place?
When I opened here 50 years ago, this whole area was neighborhood. Cleaners, drugstores, but not CVS, but small merchants doing small things. Okay, a little deli, stuff like that. But it was also fairly inexpensive, and the galleries were here. Some of the most important galleries of the time were here. Castelli and people like that, and all the artists were here. And the artists were not wealthy at that point. I mean, Warhol, Stella, blah, 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 Lichtenstein. I mean, they were, like in 1973 when I opened, their careers, were only 10 years from when they began. So it was a very different area, and there were small galleries, even on Madison Avenue, and it used to be across the street there were two galleries. They tore the buildings down. Most of these people did not live or work in this area, but it was the same kind of thing. They were beginning, most of them were beginning their careers and were not making a living on Substack as writers yet.
Yeah.
Or
So it's like it was originally kind of like a creative canteen. You know, it brought in the writers, the galleries. I mean, you were saying Leo Castelli, Nora Ephron early on.
Ephron actually lived on the west side. She lived in the Belle Nord. Oh, not Belle Nord, whatever that thing is.
Oh, yeah,
79th Street.
whatever.
She moved later. But once she did move, that table over there with that guy, or these tables over here, she held court here, and everybody would be rushing. It was like a comedy. People would run in. They come in the retail side. They'd run in. They'd say, "I'm here to see Nora. Where is Nora?" Nora. We'd say, "That direction." And so we would stand there, and we wouldn't even wait for the question. We'd keep pointing in this direction. As people, you could see these people were like very anxious and all that. That was a very fun time. An interesting lady.
Do you have any relationship with the Greengrasses of Barney Greengrass?
No, I know. I've met what's his name who runs it,
Gary?
Gary, a number of times. He's a nice fella. They're what they do seems very good, and he's totally. He works every day, morning to night. We were the mecca for about 15 years for the music industry. I'm talking about like going back to the 90s. I mean, everybody, all the important guys that ran. It was the music business was the Wild West show in those days. These guys lived high life. They flew around on private jets. They did all kinds of stuff. And then when they came to New York, they used to all come here.
There's a rumor going around that you and Woody Allen had an argument in the last 20 years, that you guys have an ongoing feud.
Oh, that's absolutely untrue. Actually, boy, we really want to. They really need publicity out there. And listen, you guys you have a machine that has to be fed every day, and maybe more than once. It's like your baby. No, but that's absolutely. Woody lived right next door to me on 92nd Street. I lived and he had the house next door, and we shared a garden. There were 3 gardens from 3 houses that were put together. And occasionally when he needed more space for an event, he would his daughter's birthday party. No, actually, I've had very little contact with him. They shot a movie here at one point.
Which movie?
I can't remember. We'll have to get somebody to look it up. And next door I have a gift shop, a very interesting gift shop. It's really run by my partner. It's been there it's been there since '86, and before that we were in Henry Bendel's. It's a unique. This gift shop is like a fantasy, and it's an amusement. It's amusing, and I see him in there. I see him in there, shopping away. You have to go in and have to take a look. It's unique. The thing I would say, that it's so wonderful to be your own boss, to work for yourself, and whatever whatever it takes to get there, it's worth it. And whatever sacrifices you have to make, and they don't feel like sacrifices, because when you can call the shots yourself, when you're not beholden to anybody but yourself, and yourself is the worst critic. I mean, you're more critical of yourself than anybody else would be. And that's a hard road too. The only advice is I encourage being your own boss and going to your own business.
Can you give anything maybe on, like, what about the lean nights, rejection, failure? Because, you know, behind all success there's that, and I'm sure you've weathered some of that.
Well, every day when I go to, I'm going to meet this guy who works for me in bread, and we've been working on different, different loaves or how to make it or different mixtures. You know, you make something, you don't get the result. Actually, fortunately in food, you get the result pretty quickly. I mean, even these breads, like the next day. But you know, you get high hopes. I mean, you get excited. You think you've made a breakthrough, and then you find that you didn't, and you say, "Oh, well, that's nothing, Eli. What are you talking about?" But emotionally, it is something, and yeah, you get highs, you get lows.
What about like when one of your places, which treats like your babies, I guess, doesn't? You had one really beloved place, even ahead of its time, a vinegar or
the Vinegar Factory.
Yeah,
that was great.
That must have been a loss.
We had about 3 or 4 years when that was the most fun thing I ever did.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was all the way over in this building I had bought. It was a vinegar factory, the last vinegar factory in New York.
Was it on the roof?
Well, no, I have. That's another thing, but. So it's all over, and we opened the market there, and there was nothing, Cinderella, and there was no other competition on the Upper East Side, and people came by droves, and it's on the way to Asphalt Green, which is the largest swimming pool in New York area, and kids, and it was packed, and every week we would do something else. We would move things around, we would change the produce department, make it bigger, do more cooking. It was a very exciting time, and then other people opened up and business went down, and yeah, it was, and it started to lose money. I mean, honestly, lots of things I've done don't make any money. I mean, and I think most things that I start doing, almost everything doesn't start with the economic incentive. I'm doing it because I think it needs to be done. There's no good bread. I got to make it. There's no good pastry. I got to learn how to make pastry. I need it. I don't like the way they make jam and jelly. I don't like the coffee. I don't like the coffee. So I'll set up my own roasting. I'll find somebody who knows how to roast better than I do. I mean, all these things that you see around here, the breads, the coffee, I did it because I felt it was needed. I needed it. Not I needed it for myself. And then I hope other people like it. And sometimes I come across stuff where people don't like it, or they not enough. Usually, my philosophy is if I do something and I really like it, I'll find enough people who also will like it, so I can make a living. It's not about the bottom line or the top line. It's just so we can do it and make a living out of it. Why are breads Jewish? Okay, why is pumpernickel? First of all, is there any real pumpernickel? And we don't make anything that looks like pumpernickel. Because pumpernickel, as you know it, that black bread is really made with food coloring. So, they add dark food coloring to rye and sometimes rye and wheat flour. But there was a tradition of great rye bread in New York, and the bakeries were owned by Jews. They were owned by Jews, and they were at Lower East Side. They were in Brooklyn, and the last really good one, surprisingly enough, was in Tarrytown. You know where Tarrytown is?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not too far.
Okay. And I went up there, and this was maybe, I don't know, it must have been 1985. I had just gotten into baking bread. I heard about this guy from somebody, and I went up there, and this, the father and son. And the father was about 80 in good shape, and the son was about 50. And the neighborhood, I can't remember exactly, the neighborhood had changed. It had become from, an all-Jewish neighborhood over 30, 40 years, 30, 20 years, it had become a slum. The area had become a slum area. And what they made a great Jewish rye bread. And they also made something, and you probably have come across this. It's called a cornbread. Have you come across a cornbread? Have you come across a cornbread?
A Jewish cornbread?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. This is really the staple of all Jewish breads, cornbread. And cornbread was actually rye. It was a bread that was about 90%, 80% rye, 70% rye. I mean, rye flour has no gluten in it. If you make a bread from pure rye, it's like a rock. Okay, so you have to have different. But like in Eastern Europe, where these things came from, they had a sourdough starter. They had a mother, and they had a mixture of rye flour. The reason they called it cornbread, as opposed to cornbread like, from Kentucky and Alabama, or from the southern states, is that, and now you'd have to look this up to verify what I'm saying, but corn was an idea of a staple wheat or grain. It wasn't corn like corn from animals, okay? It was a bastardization of an idea. And so the breads were called cornbreads. And they were about the size of this plate, and they were about this high, and they were solid, but not like a rock solid. They just didn't have any, they had a little bit of give. And the way they, and I went up there, God, I wish I could remember the man's name. And we had just started baking. We were baking, it was like, it must have been 87 or 88 here, because in 86, when I opened, I only had that other half. And in 86, there was a bookstore here who failed to give the landlord notice. And so the landlord only owned one building. He got scared, turned around, and offered me the space. So there used to be a hump in the back of the building. Sometimes I'd go out, and that hump, when I took it over, when renovating, I took it over so I could have more room to bake in the basement. It was the only reason I took this half over. And there was a wall, a solid wall. A solid brick wall, and we started taking the plaster off the wall, and we found the mouth of an oven. And it turned out that there was an old brick oven, baker's, a bread baking oven in this. So going back and finishing up the cornbread story, and it was ever so slightly sour. A hint of sourness to it, a wonderful smell of rye, okay, and fairly dense, and with a smear of butter. There was nothing I've ever made that's or tasted as delicious as this. And what they would do, you want to know more about how they made it, or you had enough? Okay, yeah. You can always edit it out.
Yeah.
So what they would do is, it was about 80% liquid. They would have the dough, which was 1 day old, in a bucket, in a big trough, and it took father and son to make the bread. They had an oven, a brick oven, a peel, a wooden peel with cornmeal on the cornmeal, so the bread wouldn't stick to it. And the father would control the peel. The son would put his hands in a bucket of water, then put his hands in this, pick up a certain amount, and dump it on the peel, and they throw right in the oven, and then it would become a bread. And they sold the bread by the pound, because every one of the loaves weighed, it could weigh 1.5 pounds, it could weigh 1 pound 9, 10, 11 ounces, I mean everything, and the breads were absolutely good. So I'm surprised that with all the Jewish legacy, that you haven't come across this Jewish cornbread.
Never.
There are a couple of people who make it now, but it's not the same thing. It's a shadow of. It's like the bagel story. Is soup a meal? Well, I would say that my matzo ball soup, with a couple of slices of that 7-grain bread, is definitely a meal. It's a good question. Is soup a meal? I don't think any meal that doesn't have steak in it to me is not a meal. So